What's up, guys? Welcome back to another weekly episode. Florida Hockey Bros. I'm David, joined by my brother, Daryl. We're going to do a finals preview, a little bit different. We're going to do a top three on each side of things that we feel like the Oilers might be overlooking or even their fans might not realize, which I'm sure there's things that we don't realize about the Oilers, whatever. It goes both ways, but this is from our perspective. So, yeah, let's get started, man. You want to go first or you want me to go first through my list real quick?
No, you can go through your list. I'm okay with that. We can maybe like comment on it. Yeah, to sort of break it down for people.
Yeah, my third one, and I do have them a little bit in order because I think if all three of these things click, it should be a fast series. But number three is an obvious one. Is Bobrovsky. I know Skinner has been on a roll, but history kind of says that Bob should outplay Skinner here in this series. So I think that's one thing that's kind of obvious, obviously, but not so much because a lot of people are kind of riding the Skinner hat streak from the last series and so on. I had a fourth thing, but not really going to bring it up. But it was more of a the opponents that we face versus what the Oilers have faced and what determines if a team is good enough to win a series or they play really well to win a series like we did against the Rangers, and what says that the Dallas Stars just came up short, two different perspectives. So that's number three for me. You have any thoughts on that?
What kind of take is that, bro?
Well, it's not a hot take. It's supposed to be like that. Well, I say overlooking because they are. I think Oiler fans
overlooking what? That Bob can have a good series, you mean?
That Bob is going to be better than Skinner, or should be. I don't think that people in Canada really believe that.
It depends on how you look at it, because look how Bob has been really solid, but he hasn't had to be better than the opposition so far because we allow a lot fewer shots, chances for
team defense.
So of course the other goal is going to look better. So Skinner could look decent just by volume. Like if you're putting 35 shots on him and you're winning 3-2, you're still winning, but his save percentage might be higher than. So to me, this whole narrative around goalies, like what you need is a goalie to, one, not lose your series, number one. Like a goalie who doesn't lose your series, because we can happen.
No bad goals. Yeah.
Yeah. Some bad goals. Bad goals are really hard in the playoffs to come back from. And then the second piece is, can you have a goalie that give you key saves? Like, can they manage moments in the game? And then the last thing is a goalie stealing series. Like, in a way, like Bob did that last year in some of the series where
Toronto.
Especially in Toronto and Carolina, he was lights out. That's kind of what Igor Shesterkin was. That's kind of what Swayman was. It's just that we still overcame that, which I think speaks to the Panthers' ability to beat a team, So if your goalie isn't fully on like that, like you might look uglier,
Right.
So, to me, that would be the way to look at it. It's like Bob. I don't know that Bob needs to quote unquote be better than Skinner from a numbers perspective. I think he just needs to be really solid and experienced and give you the key saves when your team needs it. And I think Bob can probably do that. Because he moves well laterally, so I think he'll be able to.
I think he's been really good in the third period, so that's something to keep an eye on. That's why we have such a great record as well. That's when he kind of just shuts down any chances coming his way. Plus, we make it really tough for the other team. So that might be like a team thing, but I think that's something that's kind of getting lost in this whole comparison between the two teams. My second one is we're always in every game. I think you have to go back to game 1 against the Bruins.
Yeah, 5-1.
For the last time that we lost decisively, I guess you could say.
Yeah, we didn't show up for that one at all. Yeah,
but even the two games that we lost against the Rangers in overtime, one of them we came back tied it at 4, and we just couldn't get it done in overtime.
And the other one we dominated.
The other one should have been a win. We should have won in 5.
It should have been a win by 3 goals. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're just in every game. Like, I think if you're an Oilers fan and your team goes down, 2-0, even if the games are tight, I think you're sort of losing hope because, the Panthers can pull 2 more wins out of the next 4 just by grinding, not pure talent alone. And I think it doesn't work the other way around. But that's just a perspective thing. And I think that that's actually the reason why we're back in the finals is just our ability to just be in every single game and just even if we're down a couple goals. And then the first thing is our third line. And the main reason there is Lundell. You're very high on Anton Lundell. He's only 22. This is his third year. He was already being called Baby Barkov in his rookie season. And the other part of the third line that gets a little bit overlooked is Lustorenin. I think that combo of them two with whoever, whether it's Rodriguez or Tarasenko on the right side, it's just a nightmare for opposing teams, so much so that Maurice will match that lineup with whoever. He's not scared to match that against their top line or second line just to get an advantage. I think that we have a very, very, very underrated and highly talented third line, just not a scoring third line. You know, they're not going to score a ton of goals, but any one of those three guys, and just looking at that game-winning goal, the second goal from Tarasenko against the Rangers in Game 6, where Lusty just comes in like a madman, lifts up the stick, passes it back to Lundell. Lundell passes to Tarasenko, and it's a goal. A lot of third lines can't do that, not to that level, and it just speaks to the system and all that. But those are my top three things. I know you want to get to yours, but I think that if all those three things click in any way, just 4 games out of the 7, we're winning those 4 games. So yeah, hot take.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are, people have, you know, some of the pundits have been talking about those things. I mean, even some of the older shows and you know, and I've seen Daily Face-Off talk about the third line for the Panthers being a key, especially how we play against the Rangers. And I do think it will be a key, and I think that just gives flexibility to Maurice to line match better and to withstand line matching on the road, because he trusts that third line to go up against anybody. And it's Lusty and Lundell, and you know, who are very good defensively, and Tarasenko's no slouch. So I think, you know, and then they provide some offensive threats. And so if you're matching third line for third line, that third line is going to compete, going to do well. And then, but if you put your first line McDavid out there against them, it's not like he's automatically going to score, and you know, or his line's going to score. And then it allows you to have Barkov and the second line, Kachuk and Bennett, against other lines. So it goes both ways. So yeah, I do think the third line for the Panthers is important, even the fourth line to some extent. Even in the finals, I do think fourth lines and bottom pairings get less ice time because there's more time off between games, especially games 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, I think. So, you know, you can rest guys more, you can play them more minutes. So there's going to be a little bit double shifting, and, you know, on both sides, I think, and stuff like that. But still, you know, you need those guys to be out there still to give you some energy. We've seen Tampa fourth line be a factor through a whole playoff series. So, you know, we have some guys who can play in the fourth line that can compete and hit, at least get some forecheck going. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, the competition you're facing, a lot of people argue about it, go back and forth. It's bias on East Coast, on West Coast. Nobody's really watching the other teams. My comment on that before I go into my 3 is, you know, the way that I look at it, just so that people understand why I do make that comparison, is that you could say, well, they went through the Kings, and the Kings are no slouch. They're a defensive team. They're facing 3 times now in the playoffs. And, you know, they went through it in 5 games. I'm like, yeah, we went against Tampa, who's a championship team with a core. Kucherov was one of the best players in the league this season. They still have Stamkos, who scored on the power play a lot against us in that series. And Point and Cirelli and Hagel. And, you know, they added Duclair and Dumbo with some speed. And, you know, it's not like, you know, you have Vasilevsky in it. So it's not like, you know, Hedman's still there. Sergachev came back. So we still went through that team in 5 too, right? So you could say, well, we went against, I would say, objectively a better, more experienced team in recent years in the Lightning in the same amount of games. Then you get into the second series, and I would say that Vancouver was not as impressive in the playoffs as Bruins, who defeated the Leafs in 7, competing against them in those very tight games. And just the experience and the pedigree that they bring, and that familiarity with the Panthers, having played them last year, that just makes it difficult too. And having Swayman playing at an unreal level, like the whole series, the entire series, he played incredibly well. And we still got some, you know, a couple of the games in the, you know, the Bruins in Boston, we got some goals. But Swayman still put up great numbers. And I would say that Vancouver just definitely didn't put as many shots on goal. There were some games where they looked sleepy. Petey was like completely disappeared, and he's their best player. Quinn Hughes seemed afraid to get hit in a lot of the series. Brock Besser missed Game 7, which is easy to overlook because he got a hat trick in one of the games in that series. And Demko was out. You know what I'm saying? Like there were just factors where you could say like, yeah, the Edmonton came back from
Yeah, it
down
still went to
3-2
7 games. So
and still went to 7 games, et cetera, against a team that, quite frankly, and also didn't have the level of player of experience that some of the, the Bruins have. So that's the other way that I evaluate that. And just how physical the Bruins series was. You cannot compare, the amount of hits, and you just look at it, like go back and look at the numbers, and even look at the highlights. So you could also do that, because I did that. I looked at all the highlights. I did watch the games as they were happening, but I also went back and watched, and you can see the stark differences in style and hustle and defensive play, how open or not open the games were. And the East is just a lot tighter. And then the difference between Dallas and the Rangers is Dallas should have won to 7. That game 6, they dominated after the first 2 goals. The Edmonton broke some sort of record, advancing with only 10 shots on goal. Skinner was pretty solid. That's good. But, Dallas put up a lot of chances, but they also turn it all over a lot. They don't really forecheck. They don't go to the net as much. They don't make that physical grinding game that could really make it important later in a series. But still, even so, when you look at the numbers, like they probably should have gone to 7 games in that series, based on how that game 6 went for the Oilers at home. Whereas the Panthers probably should have either swept or beaten the Rangers in 5, if not for Igor. That's just a reality. When you look at the numbers, you look how the games went, look at the chances and stuff. Maybe you still give game 2 to the Rangers, but outside of that, the one we came back and couldn't close it. But outside of that, the Panthers were dominant. Just dominant in the way we played, and we probably could have won a lot easier if not for Igor's performance. So you compare that way, it's not the same 6-game series, in my opinion. But whatever, people can look at it however they want. They're going to look at it their way. They're going to say, "Is this, is that?" I mean, the comments online are always silly and whatever, mostly stupid, because it's always like, "Oilers in 5, you haven't seen anything like this." Like, whatever, and so I'll give you mine. So I'll give some perspective. The first one I'm going to give is just contextual history of the last few years for the Oilers and in the playoffs. And I think people are making it sound like McDavid and Draisaitl are this unstoppable force that nobody can ever contend with or play against, even though this is the first time they got into the final in like 8 or 9 years together. You know what I'm saying? Like if they were that dominant all the time, and that was the main factor deciding a series, they would have already won a cup or more than one. So it is obviously not just on them, because they produce in the playoffs. The reason that everybody lauds them versus like the Leafs is that they put up a bunch of points. People say Draisaitl is the best playoff performer in the last like 5 to 7 years. That might be true from a points perspective. Look at how the amount of points they put up 2 years ago when they got to the conference finals. They put up a ton of points, but David had a lot more goals then. He only has 5 this playoff run. And Draisaitl has put up a lot of goals. Hyman has been there for a while. Hopkins has been there. Norris has been there. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, they're more experienced, but so are the Panthers. The Panthers have also been gaining experience in the playoffs over the last 4 years, and they're healthier, and they made a playoff deep run into the finals last year when they were hurt. So you could also make the same argument, kind of wash it out, right? Both teams are more experienced now, but they're making it sound like that is the only factor. And so I went back and I just kind of looked at the history to refresh myself, and the numbers show that a lot of the top 2 lines, they have performed highly in the playoffs in the past. They have put up a lot of points. And they had Skinner last year in the playoffs too as a goalie. Like, it's not, these things aren't necessarily new, but this is what happened also. Last year they went out in the second round in 6 games against Vegas, right? And some of the games were not close either way. And took 6 games against the Kings, and 3 of them went to overtime. So it was kind of a tightly contested series. The year before that went to 7 with the Kings in the first round. They also got swept by Colorado in the conference finals really badly. Like, they got outscored by a ton the year that Colorado won, and got completely swept that series. And the year before, and this is what people forget, 3 years ago, which was mostly the same team they have now with a couple of upgrades, and again, not as experienced, but the team they went against that swept them in the first round. Do you know what team swept them in the first round 3 years ago? Paul Maurice's Winnipeg Jets. Maurice was coaching and swept them. A Winnipeg Jets team that then got swept in the second round. So that team was not going to win anything. That team was not as great as the Panthers are, not even close.
Oh, that was probably pure defensive grinding.
Pure defensive. 3 of the games went to overtime. That's Maurice's style, right? But that's what he had to work with. And so he knows how to play against. He's seen them before. He's seen McDavid, Draisaitl. Again, they're more experienced now, but they still were putting up points. McDavid put up 9 points in those 4 games. He had 4 goals and 5 assists. He put up a bunch of points. And at a high rate. That's more than 2 points per game. Over a season, just so people understand, that's over 160, 70 points for a season, right? So he scored a lot of points. And in the playoffs, it's hard. And they still got swept with him putting up that many points. So again, I'm not saying that they're not going to get the cookies. That's the whole point of the Oilers. So the frustrating part is like they're going to score. They're going to score on the power play. They're going to get 2 or 3 points per game here or there. Bouchard might get some points. Like the top two lines, Bouchard are going to get some other points. You need more than just 2 to 3 goals a game to win a whole series. That's what you have to understand. You also have to defend. You also have to not allow goals. And from a historical perspective, you have been swept 3 years ago. You have been swept 2 years ago. And last year, went out in 6 in the second round. They didn't even get to the conference finals with, for the most part, the same core with the elite play of these guys. And they're playing at a high level now, but still have to go to 7 against the Canucks team that, again, it was hurt. It was not as good. Couldn't get a shot on goal. And Dallas should have pushed it to 7 with that game 6 that they had. They just turned it over a lot and just never forechecked, never really truly went to the net the way that the Panthers would. Look at how the Panthers closed out the Rangers. They dominated at their period. So with the Oilers, they had to hold on for dear life. And so I think that to me is one of the things that people don't think about. And I say that just for context to understand, no one's saying that Draisaitl and McDavid will be like completely stopped. That Barkov's going to like shut them down or Bobrovsky's going to shut them down. I expect them to score. And in my mind, I expect them to score and lose because that's what they have always done. And that's probably what might happen in the series. I think it's more likely to happen in the series. So that's one thing. The second part that I want to go to is the fact that if you look at the actual numbers, just the numbers in the playoffs at 5-on-5, which is where it mostly gets played. And I'll talk about the PP in a second, the power play. At 5-on-5 objectively, from a expected goals percentage, the Panthers are way higher than the Oilers. The Oilers are below 50%. And in terms of possession metrics, all the advanced metrics at 5-on-5, just in the playoffs, which is the measuring stick, the Panthers are around 55% and the Oilers are around 49%. So they actually have less possession from the teams that they have faced so far at 5-on-5. So that just kind of lets you know that in this series, most likely than not, the Panthers are going to control the puck more. As they have done throughout the playoffs, because that's also the kind of style that the Oilers have played. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that the Panthers will win, but it lets you know that from a matchup perspective, the Panthers are comfortable with this matchup from the way that the Oilers have played so far in terms of possessing the puck and getting chances. And the other thing I'll point out is the amount of goals allowed, because I do think that that's one thing that's actually being very ignored, is that the Panthers have allowed 24 goals at 5-on-5 so far in the playoffs, and the Oilers have allowed 38. That's a big difference. That's a big, big difference. And I know Skinner got chased and all that. And that's another thing people want to talk about. He's been great the last 8 games. That's great. But over a larger sample and up to before that moment, he was one of the worst goalies historically in the Cap era in the playoffs ever. He was like the last out of 64 goalies or whatever from a save percentage perspective. So he can do that too. And especially against teams maybe that go to the front and they are going to get into his eyes, going to make him move from side to side, which is not good at. So you're just saying that, like, you look at numbers. And then the last thing I'll say about the power play, 5-on-4 power play, the Oilers have 17 goals in the playoffs. The Panthers have 14. That's only 3 goals, man. Like, the Panthers have a good power play too. And that also gets not talked about at all. And it's... And
I wonder, do you know how many power plays?
How many power play chances?
Yeah,
I don't know. Well, the Panthers are the second best penalty killing after the Oilers, because the Oilers have gone on a run. That's also not common for them.
Yeah, I know the percentage is very high, so I'm assuming that Oilers have had more, and they just scored more.
I
think it's like 90
Dallas,
something.
They just gave up a lot of power play goals the last 2 games. They were really bad on it, and they took some really bad penalties. And he was not the top guys taking the penalty, so we'll see how Maurice manages that. But the Panthers have been very disciplined in the playoffs, so that's one thing that people also overlook. But somebody mentioned it today. It's like if the Oilers let's say the series goes 6 and the Oilers get 16 power plays or 18 power plays, similar to the Rangers, with the Oilers rate, that's about 5 to 6 power play goals in the series. But when you look at the 5-on-5 metrics, that's still not enough to beat the Panthers. You can score 5 to 6 power play goals over those games. You will need to score like 2 power play goals per game to really, at 5-on-5, have a shot of putting away the Panthers. And you need Skinner to be really good and your defense to really shut us down. And you might think that that's the case, that that's easy to do against the Panthers. But the Panthers' offense at 5-on-5, according to metrics, it's really good. And so... and the numbers are a little bit skewed because of the 2 goalies we face, who I just don't expect Skinner to play at that level. It's just, would not be expected. And maybe that happens, but again, not something that the history will tell you will be necessarily the case. And then sort of leading into my last point is that people are 100% sleeping on the Panthers offense. like 100% sleeping on our ability for three lines to literally score in a lot of different ways, from our defensemen to also score. And it's the way that the narrative is, it's almost as though only one team plays offense. And it's like, it's mind blowing, honestly, because it blinds you, right? The McDavid thing, the Draisaitl thing, like, how do you stop that? The power play, the speed, and it's like, well, it hasn't been easy for them to get here, and they've lost before, and they've been swept before, and swept badly, in some of the series, especially with Colorado, and swept by Winnipeg's team that, like, come on, like, they were not as good. They were very young anyway, and as they've proven, not as good. And also Paul Maurice is familiar with what he's going to face. And look at what the Panthers can do. Barkov was dominant against the Boston Bruins for a lot of those games, and then and against Tampa, and also against the Rangers. He just didn't go for him. He had a ton of chances. He was dominant offensively there and created a lot of chances. And in Igor, and that Rangers defense, it always makes it a little bit difficult. But Barkov can play offense too. McDavid's going to have to defend. And looking at the possession metrics, he might spend more time on the defensive end than the offensive end outside of the power play. So McDavid's going to have to defend. And I'm not saying he's a bad defender, but he has to do that. He has to put in that work. Draisaitl too, Kane too, A lot of these guys are going to have to go back and defend against three lines that can score for the Panthers, against Forsling, who has 4 goals, against Montour, who can score. Ebla has, gets shot through. Boyle gets shots through from the point, if you give him space on the point. So I just think that there's this misconception that, like, oh, the Oilers are going to score 4 or 5 goals a game, which is a bit silly for the playoffs. That may happen in a game, that can happen. That series against Vegas, first 4 games were crazy. It was like one win 5-1, the other team will win 5-1, and then shit got real the last 2 games, and the tighter team, physical team won. But so the Panthers might go back and forth in the first, few games, and even period to period, game to game, you can't. We lost 5-1 to the Bruins, still put them away. Like, neither team needs to freak out based on one game, and not every game in the series in the playoffs looks the same. But more than that, man, it's like they're not thinking that the Panthers can draw penalties, that they can score on the power play. That's excellent. That the top 3 lines for the Panthers have scores. Tarasenko, is on the 3rd line. Lundy has scored some key goals. Our defensemen know how to pinch it and how to score too, and that's being fully discounted as though, like, that isn't going to be a factor, especially with the forecheck and stealing pucks and going to the net that the Panthers are going to do. And they're going to try to work down that defense for the Oilers in ways that they haven't just objectively haven't had to do. Even the Canucks, like, haven't been able to have that level of possession or that level of shots and goal, the volume. So anyway, man, I just think that there's a lot of focus on I say this about the Rangers series, things were being ignored. And yeah, Igor ended up being a factor, and they still lost in 6, you lost in 5. There's a world in which, if you really look at how things can play out, if both teams play to their sort of ability, which on this stage you expect both teams to try as hard as they can, I would say on balance, the Panthers have a lot of advantages that are more practical. Like 5-on-5, it's a lot more power play. Defensively, they're really, really solid. They have a strong goalie. They can score. And you look at the numbers overall, and they match up really well. The style, the physicality, forecheck. And the Oilers have struggled in the past, even by scoring a lot of goals and getting swept, losing in 5, like that can happen here. So anyway, it's hockey. We'll see what happens. Whatever. Oilers fans can hate,
Yeah, stuff happens, and I do think your point on the Panthers offense is super valid, right? That might even be the most important thing, the most important difference in the series, and not just for the top line. I think for every line, are something that's kind of like was a little bit kind of low key that a lot of people, no one's really talking about, is how Bennett just took off. And I do think that he had a broken hand from that puck that he took. He was out for at least 2 to 3 weeks, and he's clearly, healthy now. And that would actually explain the Marchand hit where he was kind of bracing because it was his left hand, I believe. So he kind of just braced and gave him a little sucker punch. But one of the things that's being ignored is that Bennett's on fire. Kachuk wasn't that good in the Rangers series. Lundell was. And yeah, man, I think if you look at the chances created, just the fact that you win 2 playoff series while getting goalied. We got super goalied, like goalied. Swayman especially was
Bad enough to lose.
incredible.
Bad enough to lose.
Oh, we could have lost that Boston series if we didn't just pull that game 6 out by just defending and limiting chances. And all we did against the Rangers is you saw the matchup, you know what they're going to throw at you, similar to the Tampa series, and we just shot them down. We make sure, 14 out of 15 PK, I think, or 15 out of 16, something like wild like that. We allowed 1 power play goal, I think, the entire series. It was just insane, and you take away the goalies. And, on paper, if you do the math, right, and everything comes out the way it's supposed to, we should win in 5 or 6. But that's not how hockey works. And you have McDavid who can just go off, and Zach Hyman could, have 8 goals in the series or something, tapping it in or whatever. But yeah, man, I think the matchup favors the Panthers on both ends. I would say even on offense, even though the numbers might not say it, just because with 2 goals we can win a game. Where if game 1 tomorrow night is 2-0 after the first period and the Panthers are down, I'm not worried. I don't think any Panthers fan is truly worried. And you cannot expect that. What you cannot have is their third or fourth line just going off, or providing them with
that. To me, that's the other part. Like, you expect the top lines and the power play to do some damage, and you have to be able to manage that. You also need your power play to score. You also need your offense to get going and get you some key goals. Come back after being down 2-0. Even if you're up 2-0 and then they tie it, you need to be able to psychologically wade through that and still pull it out. The Panthers are extremely good in the third period. You mentioned that to me the other day. Like, they're the best team, I think, in the playoffs at like scoring in the goal differential in the third period and really defending and shutting things down in the third. And Bob also has been really strong, like you said. It's about managing moments in the game, managing times in the game. And yeah, you can have a flashing moment and score, and that will be awesome. And then the Panthers come back and get a steal, and then it's in the net. And that happens over and over and over, even against top elite goalie competition. So if your goalie's only average, not even terrible, but just average, it's going to be even harder, right? It puts more pressure on your offense to have to like play open and attack. And that's where the Panthers really feast. And the Panthers have guys who can move. Nobody one-on-one can stay with McDavid, but structurally you can. You can definitely minimize some of the damage. You can focus on some of the other guys as well. Other teams have done it, right? Like, other teams have done it. You're going to tell me that the Canucks are better defending and that Dallas just magically better defending, even though when they lost Tanev, it was like a ghost town. They couldn't even play the bottom 6 pair because they couldn't trust anybody out there. They have a 22-year-old out there, and Ty's getting who's mostly playing offense and not as a leader of a defender. You could say whatever you want about like the Panthers, but like the Panthers defense is really, really good. And it's been built and developed over the last 2-year period. This is not like it's not like the penalty kill for the Oilers that just took off in the playoffs, but before that was pretty average. Or the goaltending from Skinner, who went from being the worst ever to like, pretty good. Like, Bob and the Panthers over the last 2 years in the playoffs have shown that this is who they are. And this year they're deeper and healthier and more experienced than ever. And that counts for something too in the playoffs. That counts in championships too. It isn't just, I'm not saying McDavid isn't going to win a cup, you know what I'm saying? And it could be this year. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Oilers won, A lot of things will have to break their way, but that can happen. It's like you say, hockey.
Yeah.
But if you are real about what we're seeing, if things stay fairly even health-wise and just the way that the series plays out, in my mind, it is more likely than not that the Panthers pull this out. And it could be in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think that the biggest mistake we make as fans is going game to game, right? Especially game 1. Game 1 is such a
it's a predictor for the series. Yeah.
We win. Like, we shut out the Rangers in game 1, and that wasn't the case going on. The rest of the series, and you can blow out a team and then lose the next 4. So I think that going game to game is a mistake, and 7-game sample is large enough, especially in the finals when you already had all these other games played. Both teams have played about the same amount of games. I think we played 1 less than they have with the 5-game series against Tampa, and then the 2 6s. But one of the things that kind of gets lost is that the playoffs itself, it's a sample size, and it's large enough, meaning that whatever your habits, the trends, whatever's happening on every series, it's just going to keep going on. So to me, this is a battle of which team can sort of bring down whatever the other team does best. So the Panthers get shut down on offense. That doesn't mean we're going to lose. We can win 1-0, 2-1. But if the Oilers get shut down on offense, that means we're probably going to win. So it's just a matter of which team it's going to kind of take down the other strength. And I think up until this point, the Panthers have done a better job at that than anybody in the playoffs by taking away the other team's weapons. Panarin, Zibanejad, even Kreider, who, had a couple goals here and there. Lafreniere was like super flashy that one game. They couldn't do much, especially, that last game, that game 6. Same with the Bruins. I think I told you at the beginning of the series, like in game 3 or something, I'm like, this is going to be our toughest series. This is going to be a toughest series because Swayman is crazy and the Bruins are very disciplined on defense. We couldn't create as much. We created a ton against the Rangers. I don't know if we'll be able to create as much against the Oilers, but looking at the defensive pairings, I'm not that scared of the top 4, especially. I think Bouchard is great on offense. I think he's a liability on defense at times. I think Darnell Nurse is not going to be able to piece together 7 straight games of great play where none of our defenders, other than Ekblad here and there, is going to make a mistake that's going to cost you highly. So it's just interesting, man. Like, what's funny too? I think I saw the stat, like, every team we played, they're really good on the rush. Every team we played, they're excellent on the rush. The Bruins.
Yeah, but of course. And this is the thing. Everybody says, yeah, but the counter argument to everything you said, it's always like, yeah, but they're not McDavid. And I'm like, that's true of an individual. Okay. But the rest of your team, some parts of it are worse than other teams. All right. That's just what it is. And the other part of it is, you're going to tell me Draisaitl is just magically way harder to stop than Kucherov or Point? You know what I'm saying? Like, he scores at a high rate and on the power play especially. And he's an excellent player. But he's not just magically harder to stop than everybody else. But even if Draisaitl and McDavid have strong series and put up good points, it's still not enough to win. You're still going to need some of your other guys to score. You're still going to need Skinner to put on a hell of a performance. You're still going to need your defense and your penalty kill to continue to be elite. And if you're expecting all of those things to happen, great. They may happen. But even up to now, performance-wise, 5-5 in the playoffs, the numbers say the Panthers are better. And so that's the reality you gotta contend with. And if you think that McDavid can just magically erase that, that's where you get into trouble. That's where these superstars get frustrated. That's where teams get disappointed. That's why it's been hard. It doesn't just work that way. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't just work that way. And the last thing I'll say, man, about the power play too. The Rangers power play was great. The Tampa Bay power play is great. I know that the Oilers power play over the last 5 years has been great, but we're talking about percentages. When you break it down over a 7-game series, you know what the difference is between the Oilers and the Tampa's power play and Rangers power play? Maybe 2 goals in a 7-game series. And that percentage goes up, right? And it looks better. But those 2 extra goals for the Tampa may not have been the difference still in that series, right? And we had to face Vasilevsky, not Skinner. You have Skinner back there, at the end of the day. So again, like, we just go into these narratives like in blanket statements, like McDavid is unstoppable. I'm like, obviously he's not, because he's been swept twice in the playoffs in the last 4 years. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so he's not from a scoring perspective. His team is. Like, we don't have to stop McDavid. We have to stop the Oilers.
It's almost I wouldn't say it's the ultimate team sport, because I think like football, the NFL is that, but it kind of is. And if you compare it to other sports and other super teams, and we know this because we followed the Miami Heat back then, and we still kind of do. But when LeBron came over, right, they were talking championships, and that was a super team. That wasn't just LeBron. That was LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. And out of the 4 years, they got punched in the mouth by the Mavericks that first year. Then they won the next 2. And then who beat them in year 4? The San Antonio Spurs. The ultimate team. And I just think that in hockey, we have the ultimate team. We have the ultimate team play. We have the pop of the NBA and Maurice. To me, it's just written. It's there. Whether you win or lose, a couple of bounces here, a couple of bounces there. Bob gets sick or whatever.
Yeah, because Barkov could be injured the first day by the first game.
Barkov gets hurt. Kachuk sucks. I don't know.
But those things are not. We're not talking about predictors in terms of what could happen like randomly, right? Those things are random. Those things are, you can't predict those things, right? Can't even predict the refs or the little breaks or whatever. Or who's going to go somewhere or someone's skate. You can predict what everything tells you, or the evidence tells you, both in the playoffs this year and over the last few years, what's more likely to happen. And that's why the Panthers are favorites going in for some of the numbers. Why a lot of people who break down video, I mean, the guy, I don't know his name, but in the Daily Faceoff, which is very Edmonton center, because I think that's their base center, and I know Saravalli picked the Edmonton, even though he's been kind of hedging his bet there. You know, the guy who breaks video for them, they have a guy, I forget his name. He does a good job breaking.
Yeah, I saw that. Talk about Barkov and his smarts.
Well, today, finally, they did the last preview because the series starts tomorrow.
I haven't watched it yet. Yeah.
All right, so you watch it. It's hilarious because he breaks the video down, especially for power play penalty kill for both teams. And you know what when they asked him his prediction was? He said Panthers in 5. And he said, I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. Every game will be contested and tight, but I have the Panthers in 5. And he's the one who specializes in breaking down the video for all of it, right? Defense, offense, power play, penalty kill. And I'm not saying that that's a predictor. Again, it's hockey's random. It's easy to hindsight. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, and he may get it right, right? But again, from an evidence perspective, understanding what the matchups are, you could tell like the Oilers are going to have a hard time. They're going to have a hard time. I don't care how they win. Even if they win, it's not going to be easy. There's no way.
Yeah, the other thing, the main reason why people say the games are going to be tight, I think it's just because they look at the Panthers and they say, well, they'll score a couple goals and then they grind you to death. We create a ton of chances. We had a ton of high danger chances against Shesterkin that we couldn't put away. A ton. So I think that that's kind of a misconception. It's just watching it from the outside. Obviously, if you're a fan of a team, just like if you're an Oilers fan, you're gonna be like, well, you don't even know what's coming. Mike David and Draisaitl, you know. Yeah, on the power play, that's what the Panthers have to watch out for. And even then, if they get going on the power play, if the Oilers go off on the power play and they win game 1 5-1 or whatever, there's going to be adjustments, and somebody's going to get punched in the mouth in game 2. It's just not going to fly. Like, you think McDavid's going to go off in 4 straight games or something? It's just not going to happen. When has he? He doesn't. He had that flashy goal against Dallas, and then what happened? They should have lost that game like 6-1. Or something, 6-2, whatever. And you think he's going to just like skate by like Ekblad or Kulikov like that? No, he's going to get his freaking head taken off. It's just it's a perception thing. And it's, like I said, the last 3 years as a Panthers fan, even if you started watching the Panthers 5 years ago or 3 years ago when the President's Trophy, that's when like it looks like we gain a ton of new fans, younger fans. The stadium gets full now with younger guys or younger people. Even if you did that, like, I just feel like having Maurice and Cito and the way that they've moved and the moves that they made and how they've handled the team and the play, I think we're just a different monster, man. I think we're a different monster. We're scary. If it becomes physical, we can be physical. We have not been that physical these playoffs. We're trying to stay out of the penalty box.
Yeah, we're physical when it counts, and physicality doesn't come from just nasty hits that we do later.
It's for checking in board battles.
For checking board battles, stealing the puck and keeping your hemmed in and getting you exhausted, and playing the long game. And then the last thing I'll say, from some you mentioned about McDavid going off for 4 straight games. Everybody's talking about Game 6 against Dallas and how McDavid had those power play points and the goal and the amazing goal, which is awesome. You know, looks awesome. And they won the game 2-1. They advanced. You know, he had a good performance. They put up 10 shots on goal. They didn't do shit for the last 2 periods. McDavid was not a factor. And they had to defend with their lives, and they got through. I'm not saying, you know, but again, the kind of offense that Dallas put up for those 2 periods is not the kind of offense that the Panthers are going to put up. And I would say in terms of quality, They got 35 shots on goal or whatever it was. The Panthers are going to really get higher quality chances. They're going to go to the net a lot more. They're going to forecheck you a lot more when they're behind. They're going to be patient. They're not going to open up. They're not going to turn it over at the blue line. They're not going to be making that extra pass and trying to force it. Again, it's a matchup thing. People don't realize that until they see it. Just wait until they see it. The Rangers coming in, I kept saying it. Against Carolina should have been, the Ranger fans should have looked at that Carolina series and thought, we got lucky to get through Carolina. 5 out of the 6 games we got outplayed. Ewers was really strong, and
that was a very strange series. Yeah,
we got a strange series, and
that's how the Oilers
at the end. That should have gone to 7. That should have also gone to 7. They were not a great at 5-5. The possession metrics were all in. And again, you can get through a series like that, right? The Oilers can get through the Canucks, and they can get through Dallas, right? That's great. But to do that again against a team like the Panthers, the way that they're constructed, where the challenges are not what Dallas presents for you, and then a lot more experience and physicality and ability to score and ability to defend more consistently and be patient and be smarter. And a coach like Paul Maurice, like, you're not taking into account, and that's okay, man. And even if like you said, we lose tomorrow, like I said, I'm not worried. I want to see the series play out. But it will slowly dawn on you. You might justify it as like they're getting away with hits and they're not calling penalties. You're going to turn in, Skinner this, run him out of there. You're going to blame that nurse and his $9 million, and McDavid and Draisaitl will put up their points because they will. They're going to get their points. But it would be hilarious to see like the Rangers being like, oh no, blow it all up, Trouba's garbage and this and that. And I'm like, was he that great against Carolina? You just got lucky. You got out of the series, bro. You should have known that. You got lucky to get out of Carolina. Your team needs to do better. Your team needs to be better at 5-on-5. Your team is good on the rush, but in the playoffs, that shit don't matter. It's about the forechecking. And if not for Igor, you would have gotten blown out of there, And so you're lucky you have Igor Shesterkin and that he played the way he played. He played amazing. Same with Swayman, right? So that's the part that I'm like, if I were on the other side, if I were the Panthers and we had gotten dominated by the Rangers and we got out of the series in 6, or we got dominated by the Bruins and we got out of the series in 6, or by Tampa, and Tampa had made that more even, I would be telling you I'm worried. Last year I was worried. Last year I was shitting my pants.
Last year the first 2 games, I'm like,
we were fortunate to get through Carolina. I didn't think we were going to get through Carolina, right?
Dude, that was a miracle.
I didn't think we could get through the Leafs.
Brendan Moore wasn't wrong when he said they didn't get swept. They did.
Oh, I know what
it was.
It's just a funny thing to say, but I get the spirit of what he said, and he's not, inaccurate. But all I'm saying is be real about where your team is and isn't, and that's the thing with the fan rah-rah thing. Like, I'm not trying to be rah-rah for the Panthers, yo. They could lose, and you know what? I'm gonna tell you, but with the core we have, we've got a window. I'm not worried. We got a window. We got younger guys coming in. We got more skill coming in. Cedar's gonna have more money. Eventually, that Bob contract's gonna go off, and and come off the books. And Barkov is still 28. The way he plays, he can play another 4 or 5 years on elite level. Kachuk is just entering his prime. Forsling is still young. We just locked him up. We still got a few guys like Lusty and Lundell, Rodriguez and Mikola, like for a few years. Like,
for cheap.
We're going to be here for a while. So I'm not even worried, man. It's not that part. You can win every year. But I also know that what I've seen from a matchup perspective, bro, you know what? We're going in and we can lose, and who's going to care? Nobody's going to remember this, and we'll move on to next year like it always happens. The champs, and a week later, nobody cares. All the narratives just become about who won. I'm going to tell you this. I think the Oilers are an easier matchup for the Panthers than Dallas and Vegas are. Book it, put it on record. That's what I think. I think that we got the third worst matchup that we could have gotten out of the West. Because I think Dallas, and I'm not saying Dallas would have beaten us. I still think that we probably had a great chance against Dallas given their style because of matchup. But Vegas to me would have been the team that I'm really worried about matchup wise, honestly. But Dallas beat them. That's how it works. It can go either way, and I get it. And it's a matchup thing, and who knows. But that's like a one series sample. You play that series with Vegas and Dallas over 10 times, and maybe Vegas wins it 6 times, right? So it's one of those things where I just think that right now, to me, I feel like the Oilers are not the team that I'm most scared of. Like, I expect McDavid and Draisaitl to score. I also expect us to score.
I expect
those goals. And it may not be Barkov putting 3 a game, right? But it's maybe Barkov and Reinhart and Verhaeghe, who's clutch, or the third line.
Verhaeghe, another guy that didn't get going in the Ranger series. We have a lot of secret weapons. Kachuk and Verhage being two of them. I think the main difference and the reason why they haven't had to perform is just because Barkov and Reinhardt have had good series. Forsling has been excellent. He's finally getting national attention. Everybody knows who he is now. A lot of people still don't know about his contract, so that's going to be funny in a few years or next year from Leaf fans when they like overpay for Montour or Pesci or whoever. I just think that, yeah, man, on paper, I think it's Panthers in 6, but who knows? And honestly, like unlike last year, because I hate Vegas and all their bullshit, if we lose to the Oilers, then good for McDavid, man. He deserves a championship. He's an excellent player. He's not a selfish player like Matthews can be. Sorry, Leaf fans. I think that it wouldn't be the worst thing to lose. And honestly, it's not like JD Bunkus was like, well, if the Panthers lose, it doesn't matter because they don't have any pressure from the media there. Yeah, we don't. Because it's just a sport. It's just a game. Like Dallas is not gonna get dethroned. They're not gonna like not retool. Build it back up in Dallas. Like they have a ton of young players. You still have Ottinger.
Oh, they're gonna win a cup. They're gonna win a cup in the next 5 years.
Like they just gotta put it together. Yeah. Maybe they need the right coach. Maybe they need a.
I think the boy will be fine. I think they'll win a cup in the next 5 years. No doubt.
Because not every team, like that's the other thing, right?
They don't panic. They don't overreact. They don't overdo it, bro.
No, and we focus too much on styles. Like, oh, this team won. Oh, look at the Blues won in 2019. So that's how you do it now. You need a
and they stink ever since.
It doesn't matter. You can win with flashy offense. You just have to be solid in front of your goalie, and you have to look at the other team's strength and try to take that away. We couldn't fully take away Shesterkin and Swayman. There's nothing you can do about a goalie that's just on fire, but we did take away their offense. We took away the Bruins offense, which the signs were there in the Leafs series, right? The Bruins had a couple of really bad offensive games. That's why the Leafs were able to come back. And we did the same to the Rangers. We just took away their power play and the offense, and that was it. And I will say this, you can expect, I expect one of McDavid, Draisaitl, maybe Hyman to maybe go off. I don't expect all three of them to have a good series. If they're scoring like, some crazy stat percentage on the power play, then maybe you need to outscore them, and that might cause some problems because our game, even though we create chances, you don't want to just open it up and go back and forth. But yeah, man, it's such an intriguing finals. I'm so happy that it was the Oilers just because of the narrative and the all the topics, I guess, all the in-game stuff that's gonna be happening and all the eyes watching. Because one thing that I love about our team is that the last couple of years have gotten the rest of the NHL to kind of at least look at us. We're a small market, obviously, one of the smallest in the league. So I'm just happy that we made it, but I know for a fact the team wants to win, and I know that Maurice is not gonna let them just shit the bed. So it's my 2 cents. That's the last word. I have spoken.
Whatever. We'll see what happens. I might do another short video and piss off people next week. Win or lose. If we're losing, I'll be hating. But anyway, it's funny to see the comments and the reactions and how people don't, last video I was giving the Oilers prop. I was talking about how my David was going to get his cookies, and they were like, oh, you think they're going to get stopped? Oh, you think the Oilers are not elite defensively or like a defensive juggernaut? And I'm like, defensive juggernaut with 38 goals allowed, a 5-5 in the playoffs, compared to the Panthers 24. Okay. Like, do you, man? Like, do your narrative. I think the point of this whole thing we're trying to do is just to try to learn more and educate ourselves and try to understand the game more. And again, things can go the other way and surprise you, but the analogy you use of Pop and the Spurs, versus like flashy teams in the Heat, like that's a really good example. And so, that's where we are. We'll see how it goes the whole series, and I'm excited for tomorrow. It's the finals. We have to enjoy it. We're here again. We have a good team. We have a good shot. Barkov. Somebody else said the other day, Barkov looks like a champion, like a neutral pundit say Barkov, what he looks to me like is a champion.
Yeah, he's changed a little bit. Starting last year, obviously. Remember the President's Trophy year? He almost had 40 goals. He had 39 goals. That was his highest points, I think, except for another year with Jagger when he played with Jagger and Hoover on that top line. He's just looked like unfazed, and I mean it's kind of his personality. Like it just looks like nothing ever bothers him. But he's putting in the effort on offense. I think that's the main difference. That he's being responsible on defense, but when the opportunity comes, he's shooting the puck. He's taking chances. He's driving the net. He's not just kind of standing around. And also like that breakdown by Daily Faceoff. I forgot the guy's name, the one that you're talking about today's video. He spoke about that. He spoke about how Barkov knows how to dump in, where to dump in, what they're gonna do. They're gonna
he anticipates everything right away. It's
stuff you don't notice. Size. Yeah.
He knows where to go.
Yeah, it's just things that matter. All those
and the physicality doesn't face him. I would say this is the issue with him and Hoover back in the day. I think that he will get shut down a little bit more by physical defensemen or physical defensive center like Jordan Staal, people like that. I think this playoffs, he's been hit. He goes look for contact on the walls. He is looking to get that puck out. He gets hit. He goes back and trying to retrieve it. And that it's a mindset. He's not naturally that player because he didn't have to be with the Panthers style. But I think Maurice has helped him develop. I think he and Lundy have been two guys that all of a sudden now they kind of look for contact. Most of Barkov's goals have been in front of the net.
Yeah, if you watch, there was a game against the Bruins. I think it was game 4 or 5, where the first shift, Barkov loses the face-off, skates in, the guy gets it out of the zone, and like 3 seconds later, Barkov just lays a hit on the boards. Boom, goes to the bench. The next line comes on, and that's just stuff that he never did before. He's really good on the boards. He's good at winning puck battles. He's a big guy, he's super strong. But that's not his strength. That's
the other thing with the Panthers. If you know you're not getting the puck, Reinhardt does the same. Watch it. If he knows he's not getting the puck, he's laying the hit.
Reinhardt is excellent.
Finishing the check and then going off to the next change.
And Verhaeghe is good on the boards too, man. Verhaeghe is probably best. He's one of our best forecheckers, honestly.
Oh my God. He's going to make people chase him. And anyway, we'll see, bro. We've gone long enough, but we try to break it down. We try to give you guys some facts, some numbers, bias, not bias. Of course, it's our team, whatever. But
we're gonna.
I think we're right. I think we've got the numbers. I think we've got a lot of, And when the guy who's going to the Edmonton Oilers show saying, I looked at the film and Panthers in 5, maybe listen. We'll see. I'm not saying it's gonna be in 5, but let's see, bro. All right,
let's see, man. That's just no game 7. That's all. No game 7. I'll freaking lose 20 pounds of weight. Waiting for that game to happen, and then during the game, I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm not going to have dinner.
Well, good news is our team is cold-blooded in game 7, so we're good.
Yeah, all right, guys. Thank you for watching. If you like the content, subscribe. If you're an Oilers fan, it's nothing personal. It's just our view on it from what we've gathered, all the data we've gathered from the last 3 years. We just started the podcast this year, but we've always talked about the differences in the team. And to give my brother credit, he always mentioned once Maurice was hired, he was very high on him from the very beginning, just on the style and the consistency of his coaching.
But just know this. If we beat the Oilers, I'm making a video and I'm going hard at the Oilers fans. So you're being warned. If we lose, you're not going to care about us, but you can come at us, but we're Florida Panthers fans. We don't care. That's a good thing. It's no pressure for us. Who cares? We got basketball. We got all this stuff, which is kind of the truth. This is like life or death for you guys. It's not for us. Okay, that's fine. We're fans of the game. But if you guys lose, oh my Jesus, I'm gonna tell it in my Jesus. That's what I mean. The title.
Oh my Jesus.
Oh my Jesus is gonna be the title on my video. I'm coming hard after all your takes. I'm taking numbers. I am taking you guys have said sweep, and 5 and my Jesus and defensive juggernauts, and you don't understand. You have never seen anything like the Oilers. Nobody ever has, even though they've been swept more than anybody else in the playoffs the last 2 years. Anyway, we'll see.
Wasn't that Draisaitl like a beast to start last year in the playoffs?
Well, no, 2 years ago when they made the conference finals run.
It was 2 years ago. Last year.
And last year too, he was breaking records last year. Yeah. Insane numbers. Yeah, they couldn't get past the second round. Anyway,
all right, guys, we'll catch you next week. Daryl's probably gonna do a video too, maybe after game 1 or 2, depending on how it's going and what's happening. And yeah, we'll be back next Friday, which is after game 3, right? The game 3 will be Thursday, so we'll have a pretty good handle on the series and what's going right, what's going wrong. And hey, if the Panthers lose, especially in 5 or 6, we'll come in here and own it and basically talk about how we shit the bed.
And they have a good summer and enjoy going into the next season, bro. We'll be fine.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Catch you all in a few days or next week. Peace.